Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Student Hub Live. My name's Karen Foley, and I'm a lecturer here at the Open University, and I'm a tutor, and I also do a bit of studying in my spare time as well. And I'm going to be taking you through our 5-hour programme today that we've got lined up for new and continuing students here at the Open University. But of course, everyone is welcome to this event. Now, some of you might not have been before, so let me just briefly explain how it all works. You'll either be logged in using our Stadium interface, which is done with your Open University computer username, and you'll be able to chat, and you'll also see some exciting voting tools that are appearing on the screen. So we'd like to know where you are, we'd like to know which level you're studying, how you're feeling right now. Now, to use these options, all you do is select on the one you'd like to vote on. So if you'd like to add your location to the map, just click on the map icon, pop where you are, and then reduce the screen and your result will populate. And then you can see also what other people have said as well, which is great fun. There's some cases where there are multiple choice questions. So again, just select the option that's right for you. So if you're studying at level 1, you might click on level 1 and then submit it to send. But the Wordles, which have 3 options, need 3 things in them. Now, if you can only think of 1 or 2 things, that is absolutely fine. Just put a full stop in, otherwise your results won't submit. Now, you can chat as well, you can tweet. We've got a hashtag StudentHubLive18. We've got a Twitter handle, which is @StudentHubLive, and we've got an good old-fashioned email box. Now, if you email us, we'd really like to see your study space, your time management tips, your note-taking ideas, and all sorts of things that you can send to us, and they will be put on the board by our fabulous team on the hot desk. Now, we have 3 people manning the hot desk today. We have HJ, Zach, who are here right now, and I'll introduce you to a third member of the team a little bit later. HJ and Zach, how are you both?
Yeah, very well. Brilliant after a nice break over the weekend. Getting some good comments on the chat at the moment. Everyone's getting their breakfast sorted. So Jonathan's got himself a bacon and cheese turnover, which I'd say is winning at Mondays there. And Rachel's got egg toast and a large coffee. And a lot of people excited to kind of discuss and hear about time management and how best to help them out.
There's a lot of positivity in the chat as well. Definitely. Rachel says it's going to be a good day. Martin says happy Monday, which is nice because Monday's not usually too happy, but hopefully today will be. And Juliana, of course, is excited to start, as are we. But as we said, we've got a lot of new people in the chat, which is really cool. So if you haven't been before, basically in the chat, anything goes. We just like to have a chat, see what's going on, how your studies are going. If you've got any good study tips for me, that's what I love, a good study tip. We'd love to put it on the board. And as Karen said, if you've got any photos of like your study space or want to take a photo of your study buddy, mine was a cat at the moment that sits on my keyboard, then we'd love to put it on the board and show everyone else as well. But we writing down everyone's modules as well. So we love to know what you're studying and we're just putting it on our board. But yeah, tweet us at Student Hub Live or use the hashtag StudentHubLive18, and we're excited to go and chat to everyone today.
Oh, thank you, HJ and Zach. Now, you're both OU students. HJ, you have been an OU student, but you still come regularly to the Student Hub Live. And I wonder if you can tell people about why it's important to sort of chat at these sessions and what sorts of things people talk about. Because I notice food is already high on the agenda, as it usually is here. But what sorts of things do people normally talk about? And if you're a new student thinking, oh gosh, this is all very scary, what sorts of questions might people ask? And might they ask the existing students then about some of their experiences? What's appropriate?
I think pretty much anything is appropriate. People chat about what's going on in the session, so our guests always love it when you say what you think and get your opinions out there. Or if you have a question for them, they love to answer it, no matter what it is. I think every question is a good question because you never know, people might be thinking the same thing. So we'd love to hear from you. If you've got any good tips for people in the chat, there's loads of new people. So if they've done a module that you've done before, you might have some tips for them, or you might have some advice about a good book. I always like study advice. I just love it. So if anyone wants to just give me some advice, I'd happily take it all today. But as well as we've already started what everyone's eating for breakfast, I'd love to know. I haven't had breakfast yet, so I've got to decide what I'm having later. So if you've got any good tips, I think this bacon and cheese roll, was it?
Yeah,
that sounded
turnover.
Really good.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe some advice on breakfast we'll start off with today.
Brilliant. Yeah, we held a time management session the other week, and I picked up loads and loads of really good tips from students. And actually, one of the things that came through was that we pick up lots in life that we can apply to our studies, but sometimes we don't always be mindful of that. You know, often we've got, you know, great tips from juggling children and, you know, getting them to the swimming pool whilst also multitasking in a variety of other ways. And so, you know, share those tips. And often it's really, really useful for other students to hear those struggles. And of course, we know a lot of you are out there and new, a lot of you are at level 1. So it's brilliant. And I'm sure that the continuing students will give you some great advice. And equally, approaching study from fresh eyes, I'm sure you'll have lots to add also. Okay, so let me tell you what we've got in store today for you. We've got 2 sort of big live chunks of content, and then we've got an exciting workshop in the middle. So this morning we're going to focus on some key skills for study. We're going to take a look at time management and fitting it all in. We're then going to take a look at reading, a very, very important skill, and giving you some really great information about how you might go about reading actively. We're then going to take a look at note-taking and again provide some useful ways in which you might want to start reconstructing the learning that you're going to be encountering. And then we're going to talk about joining in digitally. And, you know, we do know actually that people who get involved in an academic community tend to be more successful students. So by default, hopefully you will be launching yourself into a great successful academic period of study as well by joining in. But we'll tell you how you can do that at the Open University. And then we'll have a workshop at lunchtime when you can talk to Isabella, who'll be running that session, and to each other as well. So that'll be fun. Then in the afternoon, we're going to be looking at good academic practice, which sounds in principle quite a dry subject, but actually, you know, the amount of students who've been really struggling with writing in their own words, knowing when to quote, how to reference, etc. There'll be loads and loads of content there that will show you exactly how to do that. But without further ado, because time is marching on, I'm going to introduce you to my first guest, who is Rachel Penny, and she joins us from psychology. Now, in her spare time, in addition to being co-chair of DE 100, our first level core psychology module, and a level 1 tutor, Rachel is also school governor for 2 primary schools. So I'm hoping that she's got some great experience. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
So let's sort of think about a typical week. I mean, most students here starting on a Monday, we're often, you know, driven to sort of construct our weeks in this sort of temporal framework, a week is a week. How might you see a typical week, and how might that sort of period of time be useful for managing the time?
Well, I think what's really important is to start where you are. So, you know, whatever your typical week starts, it looks like currently, that's where to start. So for some people, they have really fixed commitments that happen on particular days of the week or particular times of day. For other people, depending on what they do with their time, things might be a bit more fluid, a bit more flexible. So when you're thinking about time management, you need to start where you are. So what would work for one person might not work for another, because it depends on what sort of time they have already. So the best thing to do is to kind of try and take a look at your typical week. Where are those fixed commitments that you really would struggle to move? Where are the ones that are a bit more fluid or might change a bit from week to week? And where are the pockets that are kind of always optional for what you might want to fill them with? And by doing that, you can immediately start to see where you might fit study in, where you might fit those time slots in. And the best thing to do is, wherever possible, is to try and spread that out a little bit throughout the week, because otherwise you can put a lot of pressure on the end of the week, you know, if it just keeps leaving and it all bunches up at the weekend. So I think start with where you are. Are you flexible? Are you quite fixed in what you have available? And most of all, if you can, spread it out a bit, just so that it's in manageable chunks rather than leaving it all to one massive study slot at the end.
Now, I'll ask you this, and I wonder what you're going to say from a psychology perspective, because I have a typical week in my head, which looks nothing like my real week. And I keep saying to my husband, don't worry, next week it'll be better. And actually there's this sort of, you know, massive, you know, difference between how I perceive my week to be and how I perceive those commitments, and then how actually sorting out my emails can sometimes take half an hour that I didn't budget for, or I'll suddenly have to prepare a 3-course meal for a 4-year-old, and all of a sudden, you know, an hour is gone. How do you sort of measure the time so that it is realistic and I guess to some extent representative of something that might even be manageable?
I think one of the important things is, if you're finding that, it's like when people ask to keep a food diary and what they think they're eating is like quite different to what they're really eating. So I think we have that that sort of type of thing that happens quite a lot of areas of our life. And so if that's you and you just find it hard to kind of envisage what in reality is your week, then actually have a little log for a couple of weeks. Actually kind of do a little, what did I do at different times, and maybe just jot down. So, it doesn't have to be hour by hour, but, what were the things that have taken up time? Because that will help you get that reality check. But I think what is important is that you give something a go and you sort of imagine the times you have. And if at the end of the week, those times had disappeared and you didn't get anything done, have a think back, have a moment of reflection, why didn't, what came up? What were the unexpected events? What was thrown up in my face that I wasn't expecting, or something suddenly took a lot longer than I needed? Is that likely to happen again? And if it is, I need to build that into my plan of when I'm going to study the next week. But I think the point is it's like a diet, You have you slip off the diet kind of rules, don't give up entirely. So when it comes to time management, sometimes it's going to work for you and sometimes it's not. And it's about going, okay, I didn't manage it this week, I didn't get all the slots in I wanted, but next week's a new week. I'm gonna, what's coming up next week? What can I do? What can I, protect time? And you might have to be more deliberate about protecting those time slots if you're struggling just by having them kind of marked in your calendar, if you're vulnerable to things coming up. So, how you approach the next week might depend on how the week's gone, but don't give up,
Great. Now, in addition to eating porridge, and we've got a lot of viewers in Europe as well, which is great to see. Do fill in that map if you haven't filled it in already. And we're going to take a look at in a minute at some of the things that have worked for you, which you may have put on the Wordle, you may put in the text chat as well. We have some petrified newbies here who are looking at this, and I know what it's like because I did it myself, and I logged on and I was like, oh, all of this stuff in a week. In fact, I didn't. I got it on paper in the olden days. And I looked at it and I thought, how am I going to fit this in? We've also had people talking about, toddlers. And again, this massive sort of invariable amount of time that could either sort of go smoothly or not, as the case may be. In terms of OU study then, you have this time plan and you're talking about week by week, but is it that sort of case? And what are the expectations? I mean, as a tutor, do you expect students to keep week by week in line with this time planner?
The planner you get and the online study planner is a way of breaking up the materials that you are to work through for that module into weekly manageable chunks. And what you will see very quickly when you look at that is there's different types of activities. So it's not just like reading for 12 hours. It's, there'll be an audio to listen to, something to watch, an activity to do, some reading to do. And so actually what is really helpful about that is if you look at the variety of tasks, then you might find that some of those can be done when you're doing another task. So you could listen to an audio the first time through while cooking a meal. And then you can always go back and listen to it again, but by then you're familiar, so it takes a lot less time. But also, definitely, toddlers, I really understand. When I first started teaching, my youngest was 1, and I went on to have another child, like right through my teaching and stuff. So ALs and your tutors, we know what it's like to be balancing life with family and things as well with your studies. And so it's about kind of just being really flexible with yourself. So, use that nap time, use that that evening, because often, the good thing about toddlers is most of the time they go to bed earlier than us, and that can free up some time. But the most important thing is get family and friends on board, so if you can get somebody who could, have a play date with your toddler and their toddler and actually free you, instead of you staying, you might actually then be freed for a couple of hours to go and do some studying, but get people around you on board with what your ambitions are and what your plans are and your hopes, because I think the more you can do that, the more you feel supported, and you are, you've got that goal and you can reach it more easily because you've got the support of those around you, and they will look to see, and maybe in assignment weeks coming up, that's when to ask for the particular help of those around you to free up that preparation time.
I know it's been a topic on the Open University Facebook page actually about how do I communicate to my partner that I'm studying, that I need time, and that time actually needs to be real and physical and often involve me in a room on my own without countless interruptions and breaks. Yeah, Robert loves the study planner. And so, you know, it may be a good conversation to have in the chat about things that might work well for you in terms of articulating to your friends and family what you're studying, how you might sort of ask them to help you. I'm sure there's some brilliant advice. Let's take a look though at what has worked for you, and then we're going to take a look a little bit later at what hasn't. So let's see what you had to say. So the calendar is coming up really big. Box for OU stuff, sticking to the plan, page-a-day diary, colour markers, separate folders. I thought there would be a lot of stationery here. Pre-planning folders, looking ahead, saying no. What an amazing thing. I'm trying to do more of that myself. Looking at notes and having reminders of notes, taking my time, post-its, coffee. Yes, very important. Lots of pens. So stationery seems to be something that really helps people. And I noticed here, funnily enough, that you've brought some with you.
Yeah.
Actually, I was watching a TEDx video the other day on things that we've learned about time management from computers. And one of the things it said was making these lists and then prioritising them can take a lot of time. And sometimes it's useful to do that and sometimes it's not so useful to do that. How do you use some of these sorts of tools and techniques to start mapping things out? It seems to be something that really resonates with our audience.
Yeah, I think again, there's something about having a physical list that you can tick off that it really is quite satisfying, and it makes you feel like you're making progress through the tasks for that week. One of the things about a study planner is sometimes you can only tick off a big chunk of work, and so all the in-between stages that you've completed kind of get a bit lost.
Like write assignments.
That's right.
Really unhelpful.
You know, so if, you know, for an assignment, for example, you know, you could have like a whole list of steps. Have you done an essay plan? Have you reread the material that your assignment notes have guided you to? Have you written your your first paragraph? You know, things like that are sort of small bits of a bigger picture, but actually help you to feel like you're making progress. And I think for all of us, there's nothing like ticking off something on your to-do list. And for me, the trick is to try and tick off more than I add each day to my to-do list. You know, that's the goal. You know, and if I do that, I've had a great day. You know, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes I'm adding lots of to-dos more than I can tick them off.
Are there ever things on your to-do list that are not necessary? There are sometimes on mine,
definitely.
and sometimes after a while I think, actually, do I really need to organise this, that or the other, or do that filing or whatever?
Yes, and actually sometimes I put something down that I know that I would just do anyway, just because it means I can do a tick, you know, so it'll be like cook the dinner or something, just because I know it's an easy win and I feel like I've ticked something off. But I think, you know, it's nice to break tasks down.
Yes.
And especially with the week, you know, on a study planner, as I mentioned, you'll have different tasks.
Yeah.
So writing down those tasks on a list, on one of these, and then at the end of each one, you know, being able to tick it off and just give yourself one goal for that study session or one part of the task. It just helps.
Now, I know you wanted to talk about this 80-20 rule, which I think a lot of people will be very familiar with. But the other day I had this really complex thing to do and I was knackered and I had a hot bath and I thought, I'm going to bed. And then I started thinking in the bath and I had these ideas and I thought, I've got to go and write. And I did 2.5 hours of writing that I could have done in 8 hours distracted in the day. Yeah. So talk to us about how people might sort of take advantage of that downtime. I mean, you've mentioned listening to audios and things, but there is a concentration that you can get this golden time, this really sort of concerted effort. And that certain things also matter more than other things. Listening to an audio in your 100% attention span isn't always necessary. You might just need to get the gist of it. How might students start to prioritise some of this stuff on the study planner that can look very much like a compulsory tick list?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of that is about, you know, think about what's coming up, you know, and prioritise based on that. So sometimes people kind of skip over the online activities and actually a lot of those, especially at level 1, have really key skills and give you a chance to practice key skills. So a lot of assignments will have an online activity that's all about preparing for whatever the task of that assignment is, and it will actually work you through an example that's a different topic, but the same skills and the same objectives as the one you'll be actually writing in your assignment. So putting the time into that activity will pay dividends when it comes to writing up the assignment, because you have a clear sense of what's expected and what the module is looking for from that assignment. So things that might seem a bit of an extra can actually save a lot of time. So I would say, look at what is coming up. Don't assume that the online activities are the kind of frill on top. Sometimes that they will be developing the key skills that you need for that module, for the tasks for that module. So it is really important. The audios, the video, they often give you some extra content that's not in the book, so studies that you might not have come across in the book but might be really helpful in broadening your awareness of something. So again, use a slot of your time. People download them and listen to them in their car, or if they're commuting to work or something. There's lots of ways. I had a postman as a student once, and he downloaded the books onto audio and would listen to the chapters as he was doing his post round.
And I've heard that there's PDF readers as well, which I keep meaning to download. In fact, there's a lot of people are talking a lot about stationery. I know we're going to move on to technology in just a second, because there are loads of apps and things that can be really helpful. But people have been saying, there's a lot of talking about making the best use of time. And Suzanne thinks best when she goes to bed, so she's taking a notebook to bed, which is a brilliant idea. People are using study posters, whiteboards, diaries to really break things down. So it seems like there's a lot of constructing and conceptualising of the time and prioritising it. But you are right, because level 1, which most of our students are at right now who are watching live, is one of those times that you never get again. You never get the first go at writing introductions and all these key skills that really matter at level 2. You can wing it at level 1 to some extent, but level 2, that's when these sorts of skills really matter. And so it's worth taking the time to do the skills, because you often don't remember what you learnt at level 1, but you'll know that there was something about that. You'll know how to find it, and it's that navigation and that sort of making sense of things and developing the skills and scaffolding that really matters. Okay, now life can get in the way, and particularly if you're one of our audience with a toddler. So what happens then? How might our students manage that situation when things don't go according to plan?
Yeah, so for most students, they're going to have a week when either they or a family member are ill, or if you're at work and there's suddenly a quick deadline, or you suddenly have to travel with work. So life gets in the way, and that's really normal. So, if you have a week like that, please don't feel that you're alone. We have lots of students that have faced similar issues. That's very normal for our students. The first thing to say is, if in an ideal world, if you can work a week or 2 ahead of the study planner, kind of from the start of the module, you've built in this lovely buffer for allowing kind of 1 or 2 weeks, where things don't go according to plan. So that's the ideal scenario. Now, I know that's not easy to achieve, but if you can, as soon as you get access to the module website and things, the modules don't start officially till Saturday for the B presentation, but by all means, get started this week. Once you've got the materials and you've got access to the website, you could be getting yourself a week or 2 ahead. So that's the ideal. If, like most people, they're working to the schedule and they get behind because of illness or because something happens, the first thing to do is say, again, don't panic. There is support out there. Your tutor, the SST, they're there to help support your studies, and they can help talk to you about maybe what to prioritise while you're catching up, because there'll be things that you can go back to once you're caught up and then kind of get that bit done as well. But in the meantime, what are the most important tasks that I need to do to catch up? And even on those weeks when things aren't going according to plan, are there any of the little things that you could do? Maybe just listen to an audio, just do one bit of a chapter, one of the online activities. Is there anything you can do? Because actually, it's amazing how good that feels to have ticked a little box when you know that you can't keep up with the normal amount that you would be doing.
And then you're keeping moving
and
forwards.
you're just keeping ticking forward. And I think that just for yourself, that often is a really positive thing.
Absolutely. Now, we also wanted to talk about technology, and I'm hoping this is something you can go in the chat, because we're running out of time, as is often the case. But we did have a brilliant session on time management a couple of weeks ago, which you can watch on Catch Up. And actually, there were some amazing apps that I need to write down and steal, because because people were using digital technology in amazing ways to keep track of things, make notifications, etc. And I'm not sure if any of you have mentioned those already. But HJ and Zach, what are people talking about in the chat?
Lots of positive things, a really good session. Obviously time management being a really big focus and key to being successful at a study. So a lot of people talking about the module website and using that as a really good tool to help them keep track of what they're doing, and like you say, with the check boxes that you can do throughout is great. Robert Wilson has said that one of the ways that he enjoys and kind of helps him time manage better is having a set routine and a reward after completing that routine. We've also got ideas about whiteboards, a physical to-do list and rubbing it off. And Rachel has actually got the module map poster stuck up on her wall so she can reference that, and that's a physical kind of visual aid as well. So it's not all online that you have to kind of manage your time.
I think David likes the physical too, post-it notes everywhere, that's always a good one. Juliana has a good tip, sharing the numbers of pages for the days in the week. So she does a little bit every day and it helps her rather than doing a big chunk and getting a bit lost. I like that. I find that easier as well. But Darren had a good point that he said, I found that when we study and how we manage our time is constantly evolving as our lives do. There's no right or wrong way, but we adapt to our changing circumstances, which I think is perfectly right. One year I used OneNote and I was doing everything online. The next year I was writing things down because I find it easier. And I think that's so true. It can change. It may stay fixed for you, but there's no right or wrong way to do these things.
Definitely fluid. Definitely.
Yeah, you're right. And they're different tasks. Like sometimes I really got into OneNote a while ago and I was on it for everything. And then I was just like, actually, I can't figure this out on this. I have to go back to my piece of paper and pen. And, you know, they're different techniques and things I think that work. And it's about picking them up. And if you're busy, you don't want to spend too much time faffing around with something that looks pretty but doesn't work.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes the best thing that saves you time is having a scrap bit of paper and scribbling things on it, you know, because that's very quick to do. You're not making it look pretty, you're not kind of having to input everything and set up kind of things. It's just something visual as a tick box, or the post-it notes, you know, very quick, very visual. But the thing is, technology, it can be a help. I know a lot of people rely on it. You know, interestingly, I know for myself, I use a mixture. So as soon as I've got a meeting or a deadline or anything, it goes in my phone calendar with a notification alert kind of thing. So anything like that that's kind of a fixed thing, I immediately put in, and then I have my physical bit of paper with the to-do list that I'm ticking off. And so it just, between the two, you know, that just helps. So I kind of look at the week ahead, what fixed things do I have coming up that week? And then I have my physical to-do list. And sometimes I do take the time to say, right, on Monday I'm achieving this, on Tuesday. Sometimes I don't have the time to do that. And I just need to keep an eye on the kind of global list. But I think it's about finding what works for you. And as I said right at the start, it's absolutely from the starting point that what works for you might not work for somebody else. And to be honest, what's brilliant is if you try a few different techniques. Try some of these ideas. They're great ideas. You'll know very quickly if they're helping you or if they're not, you know. And so different things for different people, and try things and review it after a few weeks. You know, is that helping me manage my time? You know, keep it as a conversation going on. I think I said in my kind of outline, you know, the thing about time management is that it's a skill, and so it's something we learn. And as one of the people contributing said, you know, what worked for them 1 year of their life doesn't necessarily work going forward, because life circumstances change, the type of task we're doing change. So being flexible to think about time management, to try new things, see what's working, what's no longer working. Actually, that's really helpful.
And also, whilst we allocate time, like this task might take 25 minutes to do, etc., on the module materials, those are, again, based on some sort of weird norm that we calculate. And some people might be very quick at doing a certain type of task and a lot slower than others. And so, you know, don't worry, get to grips with how you are, and then you can sort of adjust your times accordingly to what feels right for you on those study calendars. But if you're spending a disproportionate amount of time, it might be that you're doing it wrong, and then you might want to talk to your tutor about, am I actually reading too much into this, etc. Rachel, that's been a really brilliant session. Thank you so much for coming along, and all the best with D100. I'm
Brilliant,
sure your
thank
students
you.
are very excited about,
I hope so.
about
We
the
love
next
it.
start. Yes. Oh, yes. All right. Well, we're now going to show you around the campus because for many students, you'll never come to Milton Keynes, although you're very, very welcome and the campus is open. So we've made a few videos, albeit in the summer, showing you some key areas of the Open University and talking a little bit about its heritage. And my colleague Dan Weinbrun, who wrote The History of the Open University, which is a book all about the history of the OU, is going to show us some key buildings. So we're going to have a quick ad break, grab a cup of tea. We'll be back in a couple of seconds to talk to Azuma about reading. So join me after this short break.